A red cape cuts the smoke, and the world holds its breath. The city lies broken under a sky the color of ash. Streets are split open like old scars. Glass hangs from empty frames and falls, one piece at a time, like slow rain. A siren far away begins and then dies, as if even sound is tired. Heat rises from cracked pavement. Paper drifts across the road, turning in small circles, trying to find a place to land. From the heart of the ruin, a low hum grows soft at first, then steady like a wire pulled tight between two towers. Two figures hover above the wreckage. They are the same build, the same calm jaw, the same proud crest across the chest. Their capes snap in the wind, twin flags over a land that forgot how to cheer. One carries the quiet weight of hope. The other carries the quiet weight of rage. Their eyes, lit like coals, meet across a span of torn air, no words yet. Only breath. Only the slow turn of dust as it lifts and falls around them. As if the city itself waits for a verdict, below them a bus lies on its side. In the bench shell of a cafe, cups sit on tables covered in gray powder. A child's shoe rests on a doorstep with no door. Somewhere under the rubble, a phone vibrates, stops, then vibrates again and again like a tiny heartbeat trying to call. Someone home, the hum in the sky deepens. The wind follows it, gathering, pulling loose flyers from lampposts, making them flick and whip as if they are alive. A street sign turns on one bolt, points north, then east, then north again, confused. By the pull of two centers, the first man call him the one who believes drops a meter as if the ground calls to him. His hands open, then close. He feels the ache of the city inside his chest, where others keep fear. He does not show it. He cannot. The other call him the one who doubts tilts his head and smiles without warmth. He sees the same pain and blames the world for it. He blames weakness. He blames mercy. The sky gives a low growl, and a thin line of lightning sketches the shape of an old tower on the horizon, bright for a breath, gone the next. A newspaper lifts and slaps the doubter's leg. He catches it without looking. The headline is half torn, hero saves, and then nothing, he lets it go. It flutters once and sticks to a wall where a mural used to be. The believer's gaze follows it for a beat, then returns to the only thing that matters. In that narrow space between them, there is history. There is the farm and the city, the first flight and the first fall, all the small choices that shaped. One heart toward light and one toward shadow. The air between them seems to press in, as if the world tries to keep them apart, or push them together, unsure which will save it. A breath, another, the hum turns into a pulse. The pulse turns into a drum. It is the sound of two storms drawn toward the same point. The believer speaks first, but the words are not yet sound. They live in his face, in the set of his mouth, in the way his shoulders align with the ruined streets below, as if he is standing for them without standing at all. The doubter answers with silence, and somehow the silence says more. It says that this city is a test that the world failed, and he will not fail with it. A gust pushes smoke aside. For an instant the air is clear, and the sun breaks through in a thin blade. The light cuts across their symbols, making them shine like fresh paint on old steel. In that blade of sun, the believer sees the small things that still survive. A pigeon hopping on a ledge, a woman holding a hand over her mouth. As she searches the rubble, a man pulling another man out by the elbow. He sees them and knows why he is here. The doubter sees them and feels the old anger rise, the anger that calls care a lie and kindness a chain. He lifts an inch higher, as if to rise above the mess, or above the truth of it. Far below, a bottle rolls across the street and hits the curb with a hollow clink. The sound is tiny under the drum of the air, yet it reaches them both. It is a simple sound, a human sound. The believer's eyes soften a fraction. The doubter's eyes harden just as much. The space between them tightens. A strand of hair lifts from the believer's forehead and hangs in the pull of gathering force. The doubter's cape curves inward, drawn toward the same center. Dust floats in neat lines now, every grain following the path of what is to come. The believer finally lets one word slip, quiet, almost a prayer. It is not a warning, it is not a threat. It is a promise to the city and to himself. The doubter answers with a breath that sounds like a door closing. For a heartbeat, everything holds, the wind, the dust, the light, and then the city exhales. The drum becomes a roar, the ground knows their names. The sky learns their weight. Two shapes bend the air, and the world leans forward to watch. Asterisk, the roar of the sky quiets, but the silence is heavier than thunder. For a moment, it feels as though the entire city has stepped aside, giving the stage to two men who are not men at all. They hover there, mirrors of each other, yet divided by a truth deeper than the wounds of stone and steel below. The believer narrows his eyes, studying the shadow before him. Same broad shoulders, same jaw carved from willpower. Same mark across the chest, the crest of hope, the letter that means more than one world, the banner carried through fire and war. But where his symbol gleams in the sharp slice of sunlight, the other's hangs like a scar. The lines are the same, but the meaning is twisted. It feels less like a promise and more like a brand burned into flesh. The doubter tilts his head, the way predators do when they've already chosen their prey. His lips curve into a smile that does not touch his eyes. He speaks at last, his voice carrying across the broken air like a blade dragged across stone. You think you're them. You think you belong down there, but you don't, you never did. The believer does not answer right away. His gaze drifts down to the figures crawling from rubble, to the people holding each other up, hands trembling yet still reaching. He hears the faint call of a name, the cough of dust-filled lungs, the slow rise of those who refuse to stay fallen. He knows them, each in a way words cannot carry. Finally he says, his voice calm, steady, but low with resolve, I don't need to belong. One choose to. The doubter laughs. The sound is hollow, stripped of joy, echoing off broken walls. Choice. He spits, the word bitter. Choice is weakness dressed as pride. They never wanted us. They feared us from the first day. They will chain you or worship you or destroy you. And you will let them, I will not. The believer steadies his breath, as if to hold back a tide inside his chest. They're flawed. They're afraid, but they try. That's what makes them worth it. Their weakness is not their end. It's the reason they can rise. His hand flexes, not in threat, but in reminder, a quiet echo of all the times he's reached out to catch. To lift, to hold, the doubter drifts closer, the air trembling between them. Their capes snap in the same rhythm, like two drums beating toward collision. His voice softens, but it cuts sharper. I am not your shadow, I am what you hide. I am the truth you bury every time you bend to them. You say you are their hope, but you are only their mask, a lie they wear to feel safe. The believer does not flinch. No, he answers. I am their proof. That power can serve, not rule. That strength can protect, not crush. You call it a lie, I call it faith. For a heartbeat, nothing stirs. Dust floats between them, catching the thin blade of sunlight like falling sparks. The doubter's eyes ignite first, a glow of heat that builds in silence, burning from within, casting his face in molten light. The believer meets the glow with his own, but his fire is different. Not a blaze of destruction, but a torch held steady in a storm. Their visions lock, red against red, a promise of fire to come. The doubter speaks again, quieter now, as if whispering to a brother who refuses to listen. They will betray you. When they do, you will remember my words. You will remember me. The believer shakes his head once. When they rise, I will remember them. The words hang in the air, heavier than any blow. They are not just two men in the sky. They are two destinies colliding, two answers to the same question. What should power be? Above the broken streets, the question waits for an answer. The doubter clenches his fist, and the sound is like metal grinding. The believer lifts his chin, a small gesture, but one that carries centuries of hope. The stage is set not just for a fight, but for a verdict. And the city, holding its breath, waits to see which face of Superman will endure. Asterisk, the pause ends not with words but with movement. A sudden rush of air splits the silence, and the city feels it first, the shattered Glass that still clings to frames hums as if strummed by an unseen hand. Windows rattle, bricks tremble loose, the ground itself groans under a pressure that builds in the sky. Then, like thunder given shape, they collide. The sound is not simply loud. It is layered. It is the crack of a mountain split open, the rush of a storm tearing through steel, the low boom of oceans meeting in the deep. For a heartbeat, it is too much for the air to hold. And shockwaves burst outward in rings, knocking cars onto their sides, toppling streetlights like brittle stalks. High above the ruin, the first strike lands fist against fist, two unstoppable forces meeting in perfect symmetry. The impact pushes them apart for an instant, then pulls them back like magnets drawn together. They strike again and again, each blow bending the air into ripples, each clash carving scars into the sky itself. The believer moves with precision. His strikes are clean, measured, a rhythm built not from rage but from discipline. Every punch is a sentence, every block a vow. I stand, I protect, I endure. His body holds the memory of years spent pulling back, choosing restraint, turning power into shield instead of sword. The doubter fights like a storm untethered. There is no rhythm, only force. His blows are not sentences but shouts, fragments of fury thrown one after another, daring the world to stop him. His movements carve wild arcs through the air, tearing streams of dust from rooftops, shattering stone towers already broken. Where he passes, the city shudders. They crash through a building's upper floors, glass raining like silver shards. The believer catches a beam to keep the structure from falling, even as the doubter slams into him. With another strike, their bodies slam through walls, through stairwells, through the empty ribs of offices that once held quiet lives. Desks splinter, elevators twist. The building gives a final groan before collapsing in a roar of dust. They burst free in a streak of light and shadow, circling each other in midair. Their eyes flare. Twin beams of red ignite, colliding halfway, a line of molten fire drawn across the skyline. The clash of heat vision cuts the sky into two halves, light pressing against light, energy gnashing its teeth. Below, the streets glow under the storm. Neon signs flickering and bursting as if unable to endure the power unleashed above them. For an instant, their faces are lit in the searing glow. The believer's features are taut with strain, sweat burning on his brow, yet his gaze does not waver. The doubter's expression twists into something darker, his teeth bared, his fury feeding the blaze. The beams hold, pushing against each other, neither yielding. The pressure splits the clouds, a storm unraveling to reveal the raw wound of the sky. When the beams finally collapse into an explosion of light, the blast tears outward, knocking both figures back. The believer steadies himself first, body curling into balance, cape flaring wide as wings. He dives forward, tackling the doubter through a tower's steel frame. Sparks burst as girders bend and snap, cascading fire through the shadows of the broken skeleton. The doubter seizes him mid-fall, twisting, slamming him into the earth with a shock that cracks the street open. The crater blooms outward, swallowing cars, throwing rubble into the air like startled birds. Dust swallows everything. Through it, the faint glow of two symbols flickers, one steady, one warped. They rise again, always again. Their breath steams, their muscles quake, but neither slows. The believer moves with a determination that anchors him. The doubter moves with rage that propels him forward. They are mirrors locked in combat, yet every strike shows their difference. One defends, the other destroys, and the city itself becomes their witness. Lights flicker back on in distant towers, a siren wails, then falters. Somewhere in the shadows, people lift their heads from hiding places, staring upward, seeing not just two shapes but a question hanging in the night. When gods fight, who speaks for the world? The answer is not yet given. Only the battle fills the sky, a storm of fists and fire, and the echo of a truth both unspoken and undeniable. Strength is not enough, asterisk the storm of fists slows. Not because either man grows weaker, but because the weight of something larger begins to press down. They hang there, suspended in the ash-heavy air, their chests rising and falling like war drums. The city groans beneath them, steel bent, stone shattered, but in this breath between blows, the silence speaks louder than destruction. The believer wipes dust from his face, though more clings instantly. His body aches, but the ache is familiar. Battle is never only against an enemy, but against himself. He looks at the shadow before him and sees more than an opponent. He sees himself, fractured, split down the line of hope and despair. He whispers in his heart, "Is this who I could have been?" The doubter feels the same fracture, but he welcomes it. To him, the crack is truth, and truth has no mercy. His fists tremble not from fatigue, but from the fury of being denied. He shouts, voice carrying like fire through the broken streets, "Look at them! Crawling in dust, weak, clinging to ruins. You save them, again and again, and still they suffer, still they fail. What do you see in them? What do you hope for?" The believer does not answer at once. He looks down. A woman pulls a child from rubble, coughing but alive. A man props up a stranger, guiding him through shattered glass. Hands, dirty and bleeding, search not for weapons but for each other. His eyes soften. He speaks, voice steady, "I see them rise." That's enough. The doubter's face twists. Rise? They fall more than they stand. They fear us, hate us, worship us, anything but accept us. We are gods to them, and you kneel like a servant. The believer's eyes harden, fire glowing. Faintly within them, a god takes, a servant bends. I do neither. I choose to stand with them, not above. The words cut deeper than fists. For the first time, the doubter falters. His lip curls, but his gaze flickers downward, where the faint echoes of life stir in the wreckage. He sees the same things, the stubborn clinging of humanity to breath, to love, to hope. He sees it and he hates it, because where the believer finds strength, the doubter finds chains. The believer floats closer, his voice quiet but edged with iron. "You're not me. You're everything I refuse to become. You're the part of me that would give up on them, that would call their struggle meaningless. But their struggle is the only thing that gives us meaning." The doubter snarls, fury reignited, but in the pit of his voice is something else, a tremor, a crack. He lashes out, a blow like a hammer, but the believer catches it, holds it. Not as an enemy holds a weapon, but as a brother grips another's wrist. Their eyes lock, red against red. Hope against rage. The city breathes with them. Sirens cry faintly in the distance. Fires smolder, but do not spread. It is as if even ruin pauses to hear the outcome. In that stillness, the believer sees what the doubter cannot hide, a loneliness deeper than rage, a hollow where trust once lived. "You're not angry at them," the believer says, voice low, almost mournful. "You're angry because you needed them and they couldn't be perfect. You wanted them to be more than human. But they are human, and that's why I love them. That's why I fight for them." The doubter's breath stutters, a sound like a storm losing wind. His fist wavers. For an instant, his face is not twisted in fury, but bare, open, the face of someone lost. But then the anger rushes back, greater, darker, desperate. He rips his arm free, shouting with a rage that shakes the very sky, "If they cannot be perfect, then they do not deserve you. They do not deserve me." The believer braces. He knows what is coming. The storm before the final strike, the shadow's last attempt to bury light. Yet inside, he also knows the truth that separates them. He whispers to himself, almost too softly for even the wind to carry, "They don't need to deserve me. I chose them." That choice, quiet, steady, unshaken, becomes his anchor. His body aches, his breath burns, but his spirit rises higher than the broken towers around him. He is not perfect. Neither are they. But together they are enough. And in that truth, the fight changes.